So President and council members, I know some of you may or may not be fans of Amy Goodman, but I think all of you know who she is. I'm here to speak to the irony of the fact that quote unquote can hardly even get spit on in its own little city here, and yet Amy Goodman went out of her way to do a benefit reading at RFK Charter School specifically to help quote unquote. If you go to the page, the second set of documents, which has a smaller picture on it, and you go to page 2, the second page, I'm going to read from it. Amy talks about the founding of her radio station, and then says, take, for example, the new low-power FM radio station that's being built in Albuquerque, New Mexico. LPFM is a non-commercial radio service that recently got a boost from the Federal Communications Commission after activists spent years pushing the federal government to allow more stations. This new station in Albuquerque is licensed to a long-standing media nonprofit called Quote Unquote, which provides training in digital media creation to empower people to tell their own stories. To launch the station, they have partnered with the RFK High School, a remarkable school in the South Valley, one of the poorest neighborhoods of Albuquerque, with a population of students who are largely undocumented immigrants. We serve students that traditional schools have given up on, said Robert Beatty. The radio station will be one more tool for them to allow them to speak for themselves. Those of you who voted against quote unquote should be ashamed of yourselves. This is one of the best public access stations in the country. Even with nothing, they are still raising voices for the community, and I just want to know when you folks are going to get on the ball and make up for this. I'm going to wait it out because you folks are not doing anything about this, and it's shameful. Amy Goodman is ashamed of you. Someday we will get justice. Eh?
Thank you. So, next is Nezzy Shabazz, and then Leonard Morin, and Glenda Piper. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name correctly.
You did a wonderful job. Mr. President and all the...
Simon Polakowski, then Tad Naminsky, and Art Tannenbaum.
Council President, councilors, I've been asked to ask when the cable board will be instated that oversees public access. Will there be a new RFP for Public Access Channel 27? And will the IPEG committee, which does not act in, public can't find out anything about it, will it be disbanded? And if the new Inspector General will investigate the past actions of the IPEG committee? I was wondering, and if that investigation, if there will be an investigation, will those be made public? Many people have come here before council, bringing issues to council. Ordinary people. If we had a real public access channel, these people could have more than 2 minutes. They could present as ordinary citizens their concerns to the public at large. At the moment, there isn't anything like that. At one time, there was. And I believe that this is a terrible disregard for our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. This brings frustration to council and to those coming in front. And the last thing I think people want to do is to frustrate council. I was here when council was taken over, trespassed. I was against that. I thought people would, if they had alternative outlet, that they would be content. And the last thing we want to do is waste your time and especially our time. But people come down here feeling that their concerns aren't heard. And if they can't take it to you, let them take it to the public at large. And the commercial stations, let them have what they have and give the average concerned citizen a place where they can go to the public themselves without concerns about commercials or anything making money. And I believe this is what public access TV has been all about, was all about in Albuquerque. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Councilor Sanchez.
We have asked for some time now to give us an update on UPublic and if they are conforming with the contract. Mr. Montano, did you want to answer that for us? Because I thought we were going to get an update, and this has been now for some time that we've been asking the same question over and over again.
Mr. President, Councilor Sanchez, I have to defer to Mr. Perry when he gets back. I think he's been heading and he's part of that group. I know he's been meeting with some of the attorneys and franchise folks, so I just have to wait till he gets back.
I would like to see possibly maybe at the next meeting that we get an update, because we are being told that we are going to get an update, and we've not heard from the administration. So I'd like to see that on the agenda at the next meeting.
Okay, Mr. Perry has an update on that when he gets back. We'll stop and hear from him. Otherwise, we'll ask for an update at the next meeting. All right, next speaker.
Council President Lewis, members of the City Council, I just now got the rules of decorum. This is a full page of verbiage. I come down here to try to help improve the governance of this town. And one of the things that is sorely lacking are fundamental rules of the structure of our government here in the city of Albuquerque. While there are all sorts of rules increasingly being imposed upon members of the public, there are astonishingly few rules pertaining to city councilors and city council meetings themselves. For example, there's no rule that limits in any way the number of city council meetings that an Albuquerque city councilor can be excused from. In other words, someone could be elected to hold a seat on the Albuquerque City Council for a 4-year term and not show up to any of the meetings except for one. So I don't come down here to put blame on anybody necessarily. There are some faults or flaws in the structure of our municipal government. Considering the fact that more and more as we move into the future, local government is as important as ever. I urge you lawmakers to tackle the most fundamental structural deficiencies in the rules, or lack thereof, pertaining to our government. So I'm urging and appealing to you city councilors, I'm urging you to hold the administration accountable, hold the mayoral administration accountable, and also work towards providing a structure that will ensure the establishment of, the maintenance of, and the preservation of a healthy local government.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tannehill. Next is Dinah Vargas, followed by Samia and Assad.
I guess those sounds would be a little hard for Art to understand considering the way the rules were dispersed. Probably not in consideration for him. Good thing he's a smart guy. I just wanted to give a real quick updated list of the things still going on, since I only have now 1:40 seconds, which is never enough time, in the city of Albuquerque in the great state of New Mexico. So the ART, as in the rapid transit or rapid ripoff, Living Cities and Brian Riley, in conjunction with the I-Team and a couple of other keywords, if you Google those, he sort of pops up in all of those. They call him a consultant, but he has a CABQ address, so I'm guessing he's an employee, not so much like a contractor. Speaking of contracts, sole source contracts, those come up every now and then, but they never really get resolved. They just get deflected, delayed, right? Do little about any of our problems. There's some audits. Apparently there's an internal audit and a non-audit, which I really don't know what a non-audit is, but if you click on that little thing on the website, if you're lucky enough to find it, Troy Rogers comes up, and I guess I was just wondering if he's still, as the director of a department, still approving his own contracts and thus signing his own checks. It's kind of weird, right? Seems like a conflict. So Brian Riley, look that name up. IPRA, The city of Albuquerque is still in violation of New Mexico State Sunshine Law, specifically with the two acts known as ZIPRA, which is Inspection of Public Records, and the OMI. The federal investigation of our highest office,
Thanks, Ms. Vargas.
purposely
So,
committing
our
acts of
last
fraud
speaker
so that people
is
cannot
Samia
collect a little bit of
Assad.
welfare, but yet people built their resume and their fortunes off of the backs of Albuquerque. We're the
Your-
poorest state in the
your time is up,
nation.
Ms. Vargas. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Thanks.
Then Samia Assad.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of City Council. I know this evening you heard about Rabbi Eric Asherman of Israel. I just want to tell you a little about him. He's he's an American Jew who's a peace activist in Israel. And I think it should be of interest to you. I know you've heard about the sister city concern, and I just want to tell you how serious it is for activists overseas, for Jewish Americans. He was attacked by settlers more than once for protecting Palestinians while they harvest their olive trees. He's quite a peace activist, and I urge you to go out and see him. He'll be at the, again, I just want to remind you, he is the president of and chief rabbi of Rabbis for Human Rights, the only rabbinic human rights organization in Israel. He will be speaking at Congregation Nahalat Shalom at 3606 Rio Grande Northwest at 7 p.m. on Thursday, June 2nd. Melinda Smith and Rita Erickson, the two speakers earlier, and I are members or allies of the Albuquerque chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace. We urge City Council to terminate Albuquerque's sister city relationship with Rehovot, Israel. By maintaining a sister city relationship with Rehovot, Albuquerque is enabling Israel's human rights violation. We have reported to you on Israel's ethnic cleansing in 1948, Israel's aggressive war of conquest in 1967, Israel's intentional destruction of the peace process, Israel starting the 2014 war on Gaza, Israel's illegal use of home demolition as collective punishment, Israeli military regulations, the destruction of olive trees, the dispossession of Israeli Bedouins, the destruction of Muslim cemeteries, and the use of torture and interrogations. By maintaining a sister city relationship with Rehovot, Albuquerque is enabling Israel's human rights violations, and that rests on our shoulders. As American citizens, we have to understand what we're doing here. Thank you very much.
That concludes general public comments. We'll go to announcements. Item 10, Councilor Davis.